Hey everyone, welcome to the investor.bet AFL round 12 betting review. Here we're going to look at all 7 games from round 12, who won, who covered, who didn't cover, did they go over or under, and also look at how each team won or lost that particular game. And then at the end of this video, we're also going to do a mid-season report. We're going to take a look at where these teams are at right now, who has the best records against the spread, who has the best records of going over or under the total, who's the most reliable favorite, the most reliable underdog, who's overperforming, who's underperforming. I'm going to break all that down at the end of the video to give you some really good information to use with your bets moving forward through the rest of the season. Overall, round 12 was a really good betting round for us. We won 6 of our 7 bets, winning on the Thursday night game in the Lions versus Essendon, missed on the Collingwood Hawthorn game, but then went 3-0 on Saturday and 2-0 on Sunday. We're now sitting at 62% win rate in our bets for the AFL so far this season, so in a really good spot exactly halfway through the year. And now we have a lot more information on these teams as well, can really build on this through the final few months of the season. In round 12, 6 games went under the total, just the 1 game going over the number, which was the West Coast Geelong game. So the first 6 games of the round all going under the total. Away teams covered 5 of the 7 games. West Coast against Geelong and Collingwood versus Hawthorn were the only 2 home teams to cover the spread. Favourites won 5 of the 7 games. Fremantle against Gold Coast and St Kilda against Melbourne, the only 2 underdogs to win their games outright. However, underdogs covered the spread in 5 of the 7 games, which means Collingwood against Hawthorn and Adelaide against Sydney were the only 2 favourites to win and also cover the spread, so win by enough to cover the handicap that the bookmakers imposed on them. First game on the Thursday night, Brisbane Lions beat Essendon 90 points to 72 as $1.15 into $1.06 favourites. Essendon covered the spread though because Brisbane was so short. The game went under the total of 171.5, which moved down from 174.5. Good win by the Lions, and they have a good record overall, but still have only covered the spread in 4 games this season, and 4 of their last 5 games have gone under the total. Essendon have now lost all 5 games this year against top 8 opponents, but are 6-0 against teams in the bottom 10 right now. 8 of their last 9 games have gone under the total. Looking at the timeline for this game, Brisbane pretty much looked in control, particularly in the first term. They kicked 6 goals to 1 and led by 32 points at quarter time, but Essendon fought their way back in the second quarter, kicking 3 goals to 1 overall. Important one here for the Lions through Logan Morris just before halftime. Gave Brisbane just a bit more breathing room, got the margin back out to 26 points as opposed to it being a 20-point margin at halftime. But Essendon didn't give up. They kicked the first 3 goals of the second half and now had the margin back within a goal. And also part of them being able to bring that margin back was partly because Brisbane were wasteful in this second term. I should have mentioned that. They kicked 6 behinds to just 1 goal during that second quarter, where Essendon kicked 3 goals straight. In the third quarter, Essendon were really good. They kicked 5 of the next 6 goals from the start of that quarter, and were able to still level it up late in the third term. Brisbane responded to kicking 2 goals, but Essendon got back in it. They kicked a goal straight off the centre bounce through Jay Gresham in the fourth quarter, followed it up with Goldstein kicking goal, and then they were able to find themselves 1 point in front. From there, Brisbane at home responded. They kicked the final 3 goals of the game to run out 18-point winners. Looking at the stats for this game, Brisbane almost 400 disposals. They are plus 19 inside 50s to 62 to 43, and were plus 8 in the scoring shots. They had 25 scoring shots to 17, but it was almost Essendon's good accuracy that was able to keep this close and almost get them over the line, but Brisbane just too many inside 50s, too many scoring shots. At the stoppages, Essendon were plus 6, 25 to 19. And Essendon also outscored them 49 to 16 in scores from stoppage. Turnovers, Essendon made 64, Brisbane just a 56. However, this is the key difference between the 2 sides, and even greater so than the points from stoppages. Brisbane scored 73 points from Essendon, 64 turnovers, where Essendon only managed 13 from the Lions, 56 turnovers. Also, Brisbane had 136 marks. Brisbane have a really good game coming up against the Crows on Friday night in Adelaide, and Essendon have a 10-day turnaround before playing Carlton Friday night, Collingwood, 107 to 56 point winners over Hawthorn, winning that game by 51 points as $1.63 favourites and shortened in from $1.78. The game went under the total of 168, which moved down from 170.5. Collingwood have now won 10 of their last 11 and have covered 7 of their past 9. Their last 3 games have gone under the total. This was the Hawks' 3rd straight loss, and also 4 of their last 5 games have gone under. Hawthorn kicked two of the first 3 goals in this game and had a lead in the first quarter. That was shortly taken away with Collingwood going on a run, kicking the final 3 goals of that term and took a 4-point lead into quarter time, 25 to 21. They went on to extend that lead at each quarter break for the rest of the game. It was a close margin for majority of the second term, and Hawthorn got them back after Still Sidebottom and Jamie Elliott goals through Josh Weddle and Jack Gunston. But this period here, late in the second quarter, early in the third, Collingwood kicked 3 goals and then the first 3 goals of the second half, and that pushed the margin right out, particularly when they're already leading by 24 at halftime, for them to then come out and kick the next 3 goals. It was just too far back from the Hawks from there. Overall, it was a pretty low scoring second half. Collingwood kicking 6 goals, Hawthorn kicking 2 goals, only 8 goals combined for the second half, and Hawthorn were goalless in the final quarter and Collingwood only kicked 2 goals, so majority of that low scoring was done in the fourth term. 27 scoring shots just to 16, so plus 11 scoring shots for the Magpies. Even though Hawthorn had 1 extra inside 50, there were minus 11 scoring shots. Collingwood kicked 16 goals from just 44 entries, so 36% of the time they went inside 50, they got a goal, and 27 scorers, which means 61% of their inside 50s resulted in at least a score. Hawthorn were plus 5 at the centre clearances and plus 5 out of the stoppage clearances, but Collingwood outscored them 35 to 26 in points from the stoppage. Turnovers, 62 from the Hawks. Collingwood turned that into 71 points, where Hawthorn only turned those 48 Collingwood turnovers into 29 points. Once again, similar issue to Hawthorn as it was the game prior. No pressure, just 38 tackles, and Collingwood had 82 and well above their average. Collingwood have a 10-day turnaround to play Melbourne this week, as they'll play on the Monday, and Hawthorn will verse the Western and Bulldogs this week on a 6-day turnaround, and the Bulldogs come into that game off the bye. It's another tough matchup for the Hawks. Rainy conditions on the Gold Coast on Saturday. Fremantle won 75 to 64 as underdogs. They were $2.70 out to $3.20. The game went under the total, which moved down from 182.5 all the way to 157.5. Gold Coast, just their 3rd loss of the season. They've been alternating cover, non-cover all the way back since round number 3. Next week, they're due for a cover if that trend continues, but I wouldn't bet based on that. Just an interesting little pattern emerging. They've only been an underdog once this season. Fremantle, their 3rd straight win heading into the bye. They've covered in all 3, and in fact, they've covered in all wins this season and failed to cover in all losses. 5 of their last 6 games have gone under the total. Low scoring game in tough conditions as expected. Fremantle threatened to break away a couple of times, but each time they did early in the second quarter. Then Gold Coast got the game back to a 1-score game, and then in the fourth quarter, 3 goals in a row by Fremantle. Gold Coast kicked 2, but then couldn't get that 3rd one to get them over the line and in front. But ultimately, it was a 20-point margin for the majority of the game. We knew this would be close, and with the conditions expected, and ultimately it was, with Fremantle getting over the line as the underdog. 19 scoring shots to 20. Fremantle were just the slightly more accurate side. They also were plus 9 in inside 50s, 61 to 52. So only 1 more scoring shot. Fremantle probably deserved to win, having more of the ball down their end of the field. Potentially could have won by slightly more, but understandable in the conditions. Stoppage clearances, there was plenty of them. Gold Coast had 37, Fremantle had 28. Gold Coast outscored them 48 to 34 from the stoppages. And there were plenty of turnovers as well in this game, 74 to 75. But Fremantle scored 41 points from those 74 turnovers compared to Gold Coast scoring 16 points from Fremantle's 75 turnovers. Both teams, plenty of tackles, which produced all the stoppages, 83 to 86. Gold Coast travelled down to GMHBA Stadium this week to play Geelong, and Fremantle have the bye this week. Then we'll play 3 straight games at home. North Melbourne are taking the game over to Perth. North are playing 2 games over in WA over the next 2 weeks. and then they'll play Essendon and Sydney, and 6 of their next 8 games as well are all at home. So Fremantle do have a good opportunity to end the season well with lots of games over in Perth. Really close game on Saturday afternoon. GWS just winning by the 3 points over Richmond as $1.06 favourite. So if you took the $1.06, you're definitely sweating a lot in this game. Richmond covered the spread, and the game went under the total of 173.5. Important the Giants got this win, so they moved to 7-5 on the season. If they lost, they're at 6-6. Very different. Have failed to cover 5 of their last 7, though, so they're only just scraping by. Haven't covered in their last 4 as a favourite. Richmond, their 3rd straight loss, but 3rd straight cover. Have covered 5 of their past 6 as an underdog. Their last 8 games have gone under the total. Now, looking at the timeline, this was a really hard watch for those people who took GWS. They got the first goal of the game, but then Richmond kicked the next 5 goals and established about a 30-point lead, and majority of the game through the second and third quarters, they held on to this 4 to 5 goal lead, so about 24 to 30-point margin. But in the fourth quarter, GWS showed their class. They got an early goal here in the 3rd term, and then in the fourth quarter, they kicked 5 goals to just 1 behind of Richmond, and that was enough for GWS to just get over the line and win. They had 20 scoring shots to Richmond's 27, so Richmond plus 7 scoring shots. That should have been enough for them to win this game, but 10 goals, 17, accuracy, the thing that killed them. They had 11 more inside 50s, 7 more scoring shots, only 4 free kicks to GWS, so umpires really pulled the whistle away in this game. Umpired at like final just about. It's 19 total free kicks for the game. Centre clearances, plus 11 to Richmond. They were plus 2 in the stoppages. Richmond slightly outscored them, 33 to 28 in scores from stoppages. Contested possessions, plus 29 for the Tigers there as well. GWS made slightly more turnovers. However, they scored 51 from the 65 turnovers by the Tigers compared to Richmond scoring 44 points from GWS 69 turnovers. And that 7 there was basically the difference in the game. GWS will play Port Adelaide this week or off the bye, and Richmond have a home game against the other Sydney side at the MCG this week. They'll play the Swans. On Saturday night, the Crows beat the Swans by 90 points, 131 to 41. Sydney conceded 131 points for the 2nd week in a row. Adelaide, winning as favourites, covered the spread. They were $2 into $1.58. The game went under the total, largely thanks to the Swans not scoring of 172.5, moving down from 174.5. Sydney, with this loss, have now lost 6 of their last 8 games. They've also failed to cover in all those losses. 4 of them were as an underdog. 4 of their past 5 has also gone under the total. Adelaide continued to be consistent, reliable. They've won 4 of their past 5 and are 8-1 when they're a favourite this season. Have covered 9 of 12 and 6 of their last 7 have gone under. Sydney kicked the first goal of the game, but following that they didn't kick another goal for the rest of the first half, while Adelaide piled on 12 goals to lead by 65 points at half-time. Even though they were well ahead on the scoreboard, Adelaide still outscored them 6 goals to 4 in the 3rd quarter and then 3 goals to 0 in the 4th. Adelaide kicked the final 8 goals of the game. Really impressive by the Crows and really disappointing by the Swans at home. Like Sydney, I should have gone back and had a look the last time they lost by this kind of margin at the SCG, but 26 scoring shots to 16. Swans were very inaccurate. Adelaide were extremely accurate. That definitely contributed to the overall margin. A plus 10 scoring shots advantage shouldn't really result in a 90-point margin. Inside 50s, plus 25 to the Crows, 70 to 45. All the ball down one end of the field. Like Adelaide, surprisingly, probably didn't even score more than they did. Stoppages, there were quite a lot of them in this game, 42 to 29 in favour of the Swans. However, they only scored 19 points from those stoppage clearances compared to Adelaide scoring 43 from their 29. And then the Swans 80 turnovers, which Adelaide turned into 88 points, and the Swans only scored 22 points from the Crows' 69 turnovers. Sydney travelled to the MCG this week for the 2nd time this year and the 2nd time in the past few weeks, and they'll play Richmond. That'll be their last game at the MCG this season. Adelaide have an interesting period coming up. They'll play Brisbane and Hawthorn in the next 2 weeks. They have Brisbane at home and then Hawthorn down in Tasmania. In Alice Springs, the Saints beat Melbourne 91 to 63, 28-point margin. St Kilda being the 2nd underdog to win on the round. They were 225 out to 275. the game went under the total, which was 169 down to 168.5. Melbourne dropped to 5-7 on the season. Their past 9 games, in every game they've covered the spread. It's also gone over. In every game that they've failed to cover the spread, it's gone under the total. So an interesting pattern emerging there for St Kilda. This was a critical win for them to avoid losing 4 straight. They've also covered the spread in all 5 wins this season and failed to cover in all 7 losses. 4 of their past 5 games have gone under the total. Melbourne scored the first goal of the game. However, St Kilda then went on and scored the next 6 straight to have a 24-point lead at half-time. Melksham got one back right on quarter time. And then Melbourne bridged the gap slightly in the second quarter, and particularly before halftime. It was only at 13-point margins. Overall, it was an even third term. 3 total goals between the 2 teams. Melbourne kicked 1, St Kilda kicked 2. But in the fourth quarter, St Kilda kicked 3 goals and none to Melbourne. However, Melbourne kicked 8 behinds in that fourth quarter of the game, where you lead 8 points. If even half of those are goals, now it's a 1-score game. So accuracy really costing Melbourne. They had 28 scoring shots to 21, but still lost the game by 28 points. St Kilda, plus 91 disposals. They had 390. They kept Melbourne to under 300 disposals, even though there's a few really good ball winners in that Melbourne side. Melbourne also had 57 to 40 inside 50s, and so giving up 91 points on 40 inside 50s and only managing 63 points from 57 entries, that's really disappointing and inefficient, particularly compared to what they did last week against the Swans. Stoppage clearances 23 to 19 in favour of Melbourne, and there were little scores from stoppage in this game, to 17 to 15 in favour of Melbourne. Turnovers both were low, 51 to 56. The Saints scored 63 points from those 51 turnovers, only 44 from their 56 turnovers in favour of Melbourne. St Kilda had 140 marks. They scored 67 to 18 from their defensive half, so they were able to transition the ball really well. And Melbourne scored 38 points from the forward half, so they needed the ball inside 50 to be able to score. That's why St Kilda were able to generate 90 points from just 40 entries. Was their transition play, and Melbourne weren't able to stop it. Melbourne, tough matchup this week against Collingwood. St Kilda have the bye in round 13, and then we'll play Western Bulldogs, Collingwood, Fremantle and Hawthorn when they return over the next month. And then final game of the round, Geelong beating the West Coast Eagles 116 to 73, 31 scoring shots to 18. Geelong $1.07 favourites, winning the game, but West Coast covered and the game went over the total. Only game this round to go over, and then moved up from 171.5 up to 175.5. West Coast still just 1 win on the season, but have covered 5 of the past 7, and also 5 of their past 6 have gone over. Geelong made it 3 straight wins, and 7 of their past 9 as well. 4 of their past 5 games have gone over. It wasn't fairly close first term. Geelong got a goal through Graham Myers right on quarter time, which gave them a 17-point lead. Then they kicked the first 3 goals in the second term and were able to generate a decent lead around that 30-point mark, which West Coast, to their credit, did well to fight back. They went on a run, kicking 3 straight goals, which got the margin right back, and they're only trailing by 11 points at half-time. In the third term, there was only 4 goals combined. So the scoring really dried up. Geelong kicked the first 2. West Coast responded with 2 goals of their own. And once again, it was still an 11-point margin at 3/4 time. And then West Coast kicked the first goal of the fourth term. And from there, that completely woke the Cats up. And they went on to kick 7 of the next 8 goals of the game and run out 43-point winners. And if you had the Cats 40+, when West Coast kicked that first goal, you probably thought you're just about done, but as Geelong do, they can go on runs, score really quickly. In this game, we needed Geelong to have 105 or more points, which took their team total, and early on in the game, felt pretty comfortable. Then the lack of scoring, particularly by the Cats for the majority of the third quarter, really dried up. They only scored 14 points in that term. I was a little bit concerned, and I knew sitting at 69, we needed to get to 105. We definitely needed 6 goals. But at least 5 goals with some behinds in there as well would have gotten us over the line. Had to pause the game at this point, and I wasn't able to watch last quarter live, so I came back and watched it later. And I thought it's going to probably go close, but might just fall short. But Geelong kicking those 7 goals and 5 behinds scoring 47 points in the fourth quarter. Got us over the line there. So to end the round on a win and go perfect on Sunday and also on Saturday to end the round. Looking at the stats for this game, 31 scoring shots to 18, so plus 13. Inside 50s 59 to 43. The scoring shot differential and the inside 50 differential basically tell you the story. Center clearances 17 to 11, but West Coast won the stoppages 27 to 19 and did well at converting that into points. Geelong only outscored them by 1 point in terms of points from stoppage clearances, but West Coast needed a +8 advantage to be able to basically be on even terms. Turnovers 63 to 54. Geelong scored 70 points from those 63 turnovers, whereas West Coast only managed 34 from Geelong's 54 turnovers. Geelong had 21 tackles inside 50 in this game. Extremely good pressure on that West Coast Eagles defense. Interesting game for the Eagles this week. They're playing North Melbourne, and that game will be in Adelaide. And Geelong are back at home in round 13 against the Gold Coast Suns. Looking at the ladder at the end of round 12, Collingwood sit half a game clear on top of the Brisbane Lions, with 6 points clear of third. So Collingwood and Brisbane definitely have separated themselves, the two teams, from the 2023 Grand Final. Crows, Suns, Cats all on 32 points, followed by the Hawks, Giants and Dockers, 1 game behind them on 28 points. Western Bulldogs and Essendon 1 game outside the top 8. St Kilda, Melbourne 2 games outside, and then Carlton, Swans, Port Adelaide, all 3 games outside the top 8. Basically, looking at this ladder right now, it's hard to see any team below the Western Bulldogs being a genuine contender this season. I don't think any side below 9th is going to make the top 8. So at the end of the day, it's going to be those 9 teams that I have highlighted there will fight out those top 8 positions. So one team will drop out. Right now, as it stands, percentage is likely going to be important. Fremantle have the lowest percentage, followed by GWS and Hawthorn. Teams with higher percentages should be safe, assuming they hold form for the rest of the season. Now, with that being said, we're going to go through a bit of a mid-season report, see where these teams are at, and see who's performing and who's underperforming. Firstly, looking at the ATS data, so how teams have gone at covering the spread or not covering the spread. Home teams are 53 to 52 against the spread. Underdogs 53 to 52. Big underdogs 30.5 or more are 12 to 6 against the spread. And home underdogs right now 23 to 22. So very little between the teams as a whole. The best teams against the spread are Adelaide at 8-4, Collingwood at 8-4, and Geelong at 8-4 against the spread. The worst team is the Brisbane Lions. They've only covered 4 of their 12 games by different situations. So in the AFL bet finders, you can look and see teams' performances by different situations. Right now, Adelaide are 7-1 against the spread in day matches, only 1-3 against the spread in night games, and that came in that win there came against the Swans just now, so they are 0-3 in night matches going into that. Collingwood are 7-2 against the spread in night matches. Richmond are 4-0 against the spread in night games, and Geelong are 4-0 against the spread when they're an underdog this season. The worst teams by situation: Brisbane are 0-5 against the spread when they are big favourites and minus 30.5 or more. Carlton are 1-5 against the spread when they're an underdog, and Carlton are also 1-5 against the spread in night matches. Looking at total points betting, West Coast are the best overside. 8 of their 12 games have gone over. Carlton are the best underside. 9 of their 11 games have gone under. By situation, West Coast, 5 of their 6 games at home have gone over the total. Also, all of those have been as an underdog so far this season. You see 5-1 as a home underdog. Western Bulldogs 5-1 to the over as an underdog. Western Bulldogs are also 4-1 to the over in away matches. The unders by situation will come back to Carlton as an underdog. All 6 games have gone under, and night games, all 6 games have gone under the total. Essendon are 6-1 to the under at night. Brisbane and Richmond are both 0-4 to the under in night games as well. Richmond will add to that. 8 of their 11 games as an underdog have gone under the total. In terms of winning games, the most reliable favourites, the Western Bulldogs are 5-0 as a favourite. Essendon are 3-0 as a favourite. Adelaide 8-1 as a favourite. Collingwood 9-2 as a favourite. And Brisbane Lions and Gold Coast are both 8-2 as favourites. The least reliable favourites, Melbourne are 3-3. Port Adelaide 2-2 as well. Wins as an underdog, so I'll highlight those here. Firstly, Fremantle are 2-2 and GWS are 3-2 as an underdog. Those are the teams with the most wins and best win percentage as an underdog this season. Now, if you've watched my videos previously, you watched the pre-season report, you'll notice one of the things I look at in terms of what it takes to win the premiership. Firstly, you need to finish top 4 on the ladder. 11 of the last 13 teams who've won the premiership have finished in the top 4. Brisbane bucked that trend last year though, winning from 5th. You have to have a top 5 attack in terms of points scored per game. 10 of the last 13 premiership winners have had that. And you also need a top 4 defense in terms of points conceded. 9 of the last 10 premiership winners have had that. Right now, 3 teams are fitting the criteria of all 3 of those. Collingwood, number 1 on the ladder, number 5 in points scored, and number 1 defensively. 5 of their final 11 games are against top 8 opposition, so it's very difficult to see them falling too far from that. If they raise their attack number up slightly as well, they're going to be really hard to beat. Gold Coast sit 4th on the ladder as the number 2 attack and number 2 defense. They have half their games, so 6 of their last 12 against current top 8 opponents. Adelaide sit 3-3-3. 6 of their final 12 games are against top 8 opponents. Those 3 teams all fit the criteria. They all have 50% or less games against top 8 opponents. If they hold form, they're going to all be there come the end of the season. Brisbane are the only other team in the top 4. They sit 2nd on the ladder, but have a 7th ranked attack. So that's the only metric that doesn't fit all 3 categories. Brisbane Lions, though, have 8 of their final 11 games against top 8 opponents. They definitely have a really tough run home. But those metrics are something you can use to analyze team performances. And one of the other ones you can use is the Pythagorean analysis. This allows you to compare team performance and see who's exceeding or performing below expectations. Right now, Collingwood top of the ladder. They should have won about 9 games. They've won 10, so slightly exceeding expectations. Brisbane Lions are 1.5 games ahead of where they should have been. Like we mentioned, they do have a tough run home. I think they'll be right there in that top 5 to 6 teams come the end of the season, though, that's for sure, based on where they're currently sitting. They've been doing what Collingwood did a couple of years ago, winning a lot of close games, which is getting them over the line and posting wins instead of losses. Adelaide are a team right at the top of the ladder who have won less games than they potentially should have. They should have probably won 9, maybe even 10 games. They've only won 8 so far, so there's room for improvement from terms of winning games perspective. Teams like Gold Coast, Geelong, Hawthorn, GWS, and Fremantle all basically on par with where they should have been. Western Bulldogs aside, that potentially could have won 1 to 2 more games. Essendon, and this is why I talk about these teams that are on the fringe of the top 8. It's going to be difficult for them to get in there. Essendon should have only won 3 to 4 games right now, have 6 wins, so have been winning more games than they really should have, and it's going to be difficult to maintain that. That being said, that's a quick look at where teams are at right now. If you want to dive deeper with the stats, definitely check out the bet finders, which you can access through the link in the description. That's where you also get all my bets as well. As I said, we've won 62% of bets so far this season, over 100 plays. Inside the members area, you can go back and look at every bet on the season so far, all the way back to opening round, see which bets have won, see which ones have lost, and view all the previous bets as well to see how we've gotten to where we're at right now this season. So looking forward to continuing it. Love to see you jump on board. Plus, use these tools in the bet finders to make really smart betting decisions on the AFL and make sure that you're profiting through the rest of the season. It's so awesome to be able to make money every week betting on the AFL and continually profit on it every year. Thanks guys for watching. Thanks for following the channel. Stay tuned for the preview for round number 13. That video will be coming out soon. I'll see you guys there.